Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 23, 2136. By my assessment, the humans' shuttle was barely FTL worthy. It would be lucky to defeat a solar sail in combat. I was certain their craft choice was designed to tail me with minimal risk of detection. Now, it wasn't like I was going to forget they were on my tail, so I didn't see the point of stealthy monitorization. With Carlos requiring medical oversight, we persuaded the predators to dock with us. The Terran shuttle squeezed into the escape pod bay, with little room to spare. The Harchan journalists were floored to see the accommodations the Terrans had whipped up for the Def Talpin. I imagined the Federation would be shocked as well. There was a reason the humans chose these Gojits to represent our refugees. That painted a different picture of the Cradle invasion, apart from the story of vicious annihilation circulating now. Samantha and Carlos were still unwilling to land on Alpha in person after their ambassador was held hostage for weeks. I'm sure the attempted murder wasn't an enticement either. My guards valued staying in one piece. My expectation was that the humans would detach in their shuttle once we got close enough. Their little clunker would either hide out until our hopeful return, or they would find their own way back. My read was that they weren't eager to stay around the Federation hub. I know what I'm going to tell the representatives about the humans. But I don't know how to justify my own actions with Marcel. The low hum of the ship's engines pulsed into my paws as I slunk around the humans' personal effects. Samantha had left an unlocked holopad unattended, and I was gripped by the compulsion to scour their internet. We wouldn't have access to the live network, hundreds of star systems away from Sol, but there was an archive of what existed before our departure. The guilt drumming away in my skull wondered what the Federation was told about Marcel. I breathed the words aloud as I typed in a search bar. Marcel, human tortured by Gojid. My heart seized, scrolling through the results that turned up. After everything I had learned about the Terrans, it made my sins even more terrible. The thought that a predator could share such similarities with us, and that they could truly be our friends, had been fantastical at the time. Why had I not even considered, for a second, that the human captive was innocent? I tapped a video result that claimed to have been shown to the Federation. My claws landed themselves in my mouth, and I chewed with more intensity than ever. Marcel was feeding a prey animal, while a speaker called Noah elaborated on his veterinary aspirations. It was tough to see the life in his hazel irises, the same ones I had seen pleading with me in agony. How could I ever come to terms with the fact that I tormented an herbivore human, who found his joy through saving animals? The images switched to close-up images of Marcel's wounds. It broke my heart to see how famished the human looked, and to think about his misery. Tears swelled in my eyes, and mucus oozed from my nose. A few choking sobs came out, as the full weight of self-hatred slammed down on me again. Samantha had been right when she told Carlos I didn't deserve cordiality. A clawless hand swiped the holopad away from me. Dear God, Sovlin. Why would you do that to yourself? Sam, that's not the worst thing he could have sought out on the internet. Perhaps we should be happy, Carlos chimed in. I jumped out of the chair, wiping my eyes on the back of my paw. Samantha's auburn hair looked disheveled, and my woefulness transitioned to concern. I hadn't seen the female eat anything, which was compounding a lack of self-care and sleep. The reason why she was grief-stricken was obvious now. We had to be certain she wouldn't make any hasty decisions with such a tenuous mental state. What is the worst thing, Carlos? Predation? Xenophobia? I asked. The male guard snorted. No. Forget about it. You're going to give the holopad back to Sam, and promise never to tinker with our things again. Sorry, I needed to remember what I've done. I was starting to feel almost normal with you and the Harchan. It felt like I was with my old crew, but that life is gone. I don't deserve happiness. It's time to move on, Sovlin. Samantha showed a rare hint of sympathy, curling her lips in a way that didn't seem hostile. The female predator looked lethargic and downcast. You can honor Marcel by doing something good when you land on Alpha today. But you fucked up, bad. That was then, and this is now. I've decided that there's something worthwhile in you, and so has the UN. You have no right to let us down. My paws relinquished my grip on the holopad, and I allowed the alien hunters to steer me out to the common area. Somehow, Samantha's rough words were comforting. She reminded me I had a purpose here far beyond myself. Every living creature on this side of the galaxy, Slanik, Marcel, my guards, the Gojid refugees, was depending on me. The entire Federation would be disbanded and slaughtered if I didn't disprove the Arxer's deceit with conclusive evidence. It would be a travesty for them to flip the script and masquerade as the original victims in this mess. Whatever my past failings were, penance wasn't as important as stopping the humans from forging this unholy alliance. I need to save the Terrans from vengeful temptation. The species who liberated a cattle ship and bashed Arxer prisoners over the head is still in there. Finding justice for my first officer's death was an urgent consideration too. Riesel lost his life, per the humans' dossier, after helping Marcel escape my clutches. The Kolshan Commonwealth had proved themselves a menace to the Federation and our forms of diplomacy. Someone needed to put an end to their treachery before more innocents turned up dead. This was personal to me now, and I wanted to see the masterminds hang. The Harchan journalists were dotted across the common area, with scribbles and notes strewn everywhere. Silene looked concerned as she noticed my sniffling and bleary eyes. I knew the journalists were worried the predators were intimidating me or throwing their weight around. It was all I could do to delay any interrogation of Samantha, with her fragile state. The humans needed to talk over their history soon, unless they wanted it covered in an unfavorable light. Silene, has your team located any pertinent information? I asked. The short reptile drummed her toes on a table. If I give you the rundown, are the predators finally going to answer my questions? Samantha bared her teeth. You're not in any position of power here. This is our mission, and I'm not your lab rat. You're, what? The translator mangled that idiom. A rodent in a lab? I repeated. For animal testing. To develop drugs, or research behaviors. Every prey sapient in the room gaped at the primate, and even I failed to mask my horror. Humans ran unethical experimentation on captured animals, treating them like expendable subjects. That was not an empathetic practice. There was no defense for wide-scale cruelty. It was implied that there were no safeguards to mitigate the suffering either. Okay, all of you, quit it with that look. Carlos leapt to Samantha's rescue, rounding on me with a glare. How else do you develop medicines to cure diseases and uncover the side effects before giving it to your own people? Cell cultures, Harchan tissue samples, microdosing, and computer models. Murder-free, Silene said. My spines bristled from the predator's anger. Like any civilized culture. We don't treat animals as our toys. The female guard bit her lip. Human, no, sapient lives take precedence over everything else. I'd sacrifice 1,000,000 animals to save one person I. As much as I wanted to push back against Sam's statement, it was tough to argue with someone who looked so broken. If I believed it was my only option, there were no sacrifices I wouldn't make to bring back my family. Humans rushing disease cures might have come to the same conclusions. I tucked away a mental note to give the predator some simulations that could put an end to that barbarism. The Harchan reporter blinked in disgust. There are better ways. That's not science. On the plus side, at least the humans do try to heal their people, I told Silene. When I first captured Marcel, I didn't even think they had medicine. He moved away from my sedative needle, like he was scared of doctors. Carlos slapped his forehead. Sovlin, maybe we just don't like needles. Between the sight of blood and the pain, it's not a carnival ride. Sorry, we're off to a terrible start. I don't see why these reporters can't get along with you. Work this out, for your sake. This is your chance to justify yourselves to the galaxy, humans. We've done nothing to you. Why do we need to justify anything? Samantha spat. I know you don't want to, but it's about time someone listened to your side of the story. Don't you think? There's a lot at stake here, especially if more races decide to come after you. The two predators shared a glance, as the Harchan scrutinized their mannerisms. They both gave a grudging nod, and VE built rules signed by every modern nation to prohibit attacks on civilian populations. To ensure that combatants receive humane treatment. Rights the Federation denied us, Samantha noted. You could sum up human morality in one statement: we call it the Golden Rule. Do unto others as you wish to be done unto you. The Harchan reporter palmed her chin in thought. Traces of fear lingered in her gaze, but I could tell she was listening to their words. That was a lot more than most people would attempt. I'm glad that I was right about her giving them an honest shot. Silani squinted at the duo. Does that still apply? To anyone willing to return the courtesy, sure. But humanity isn't itching to be the galaxy's punching bag, Samantha replied. The Federation broke that rule first. Sam, if I can call you that, the way we all have talked about you is terrible. The public discourse is hateful, and your personal losses resonate with me. I can't imagine what I'd do in your paws. My species was a part of that. The female predator sniffled. There's nothing any of us can do about that now. Let's talk about heroes, shall we? You might be interested in some ancient mythology, how early and modern humans made sense of the world. Silani hesitantly rose to her feet and dragged her chair alongside the humans. I could see the tears swelling her eyes, alongside the acceleration of her breathing. Her slender arms were shaking, but she situated herself by the humans. She reached out with a trembling appendage, offering Samantha a tissue. The UN guard took it deftly and dabbed at her eyes. I'd like that. Let me tell your stories, the Harchan replied. A glimmer of hope crept into those green eyes, reminding me of the humanity that came to the galaxy with righteous zeal. Those people were still in there, despite their heartache. I had to believe it was possible to mend our rifts and to steer them from the path of destruction. Those lost on Earth couldn't be brought back, but my predator friends didn't have to die with them. Samantha wove a yarn of supernatural fantasies, early scientists, and ambitious explorers seeking trade routes. Carlos added his own tales of monster slayers and fictional kings, with their own honor code. Terran legends sounded grandiose and heroic from their lips. They elevated their greatest champions as guardians and pioneers who advanced civilization at personal risk. The contrast with the legacy of conquest and subjugation Zarn put forward was striking. The prey reptile shivered from prolonged exposure to humans, absorbing the descriptions of their early history. All it took was active listening to keep the predators talking. I mused to myself that this was how it should have been. This was the piece that could have been reality. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 24, 2136. The human soldiers detached in their shuttle well before we entered Kolshan territory. No doubt, the predators wanted to avoid being picked up by sensor readings. If patrol ships asked us to account for all detected lifeforms, it would be impossible to hide their presence. Our concerns were validated by the harsh reception we received on descent toward Alpha. Gunships sidled up to us at full speed and relayed demands to power down our engines. Venlo vessel, you are not welcome on Federation grounds. The Kolshan's chief Nikonus was broadcasting a hail on military frequencies with a glare that rivaled human ferocity. I let your beast speak once, and that was an error on my part. The Gojid cradle, the crocodile army, and dozens of worlds have perished because of that little misstep. I accepted the transmission, striking my serious pose. This is Captain Sovlin from the Gojid attachment of the Federation fleet. I am here to request asylum for our refugees. Do the humans think we're idiots? There's 6 other signatures on board, and you were a known predator prisoner. Nikonus bobbed his indigo tentacles in irritation. By law, Venlo visitors should be held as enemies of state for raising arms against other prey races. I waved for the Harchan reporters to step into the field of view, while Talpin and Berna filtered in on my other side. The deaf Gojid wielded a device that could approximate subtitles, and was growing livid from the dialogue. He began punching away at his speech synthesizer, but I flicked my claws in warning. If the Kolshan Commonwealth realized our Terran sympathizing alignment, there might not be an opportunity to land on Alpha. It was an uphill battle to convince them we were friendlies already. You'd think this roll call would assuage their doubts, but they seem to be expecting predator trickery. News of the assault on Earth has reached the wider galaxy. They know the Venmol fought by humanity. The tension was palpable, as my scans confirmed that the Kolshans kept their weapons powered up. I had no idea if they'd deny us passage or attack us outright, since nobody had shown any concern for the suffering Gojids. The Federation had abandoned my people thus far. There had been no aid shipments or reinforcements at our borders. Not one friend would go toe-to-toe with either predator for us. Anger bubbled inside my chest, but I pushed it down. Search us all you want. I rescued these Harchan personnel from an Arxer attack. We have useful intelligence. You're adding to their trauma also, if you care. Humph. What are they hiding on your ship then? Bombs? Bioweapons, the Kolshan demanded. I struggled to keep my voice steady. The Venlo were able to secure my release and move some Gojid refugees to their territories. I'll be happy to discuss the details before the Federation representatives, whoever is here, gracious Chief Nikonus. Let the Harchan speak. I recognize a renowned journalist when I see one, Silani. I want to know about the Federation's response to this multilateral attack, and your plans to deal with these human predators, the journalist said, without hesitation. Foul is barely holding, and there's a refugee crisis brewing on your borders. The people want answers. My people want answers. That doesn't give you the right to barge in here without clearance. You're disrupting important proceedings. This is important too, Chief Nikonus. The Kolshan breathed a heavy sigh, brushing a tentacle across his forehead. These ship frequencies were often monitored by various media outlets, and I'd hope it'd still generate bad publicity if they turned non-Venlo away. Silani and I felt that Nikonus owed us the truth, even if we entered his territory on false pretenses. A trace of my former bravado flared in my chest. The old Captain Sovlin wouldn't have been turned away from a mission objective by anyone. I plotted in a landing course for the governance center, and ignored the target lock icons on screen. We would be through Alpha's silky atmosphere long before Nikonus gave a kill order. Nothing involving bureaucrats happened quickly. What are you doing, Sovlin? Have you lost your mind? The Kolshan leader hissed. Fire away. You wouldn't dare. I chuckled, noting the irony. Those were the same words I told Tarva responding to her distress signal, right before the Venmol threw missiles in my face. Shooting down asylum seekers would have the wondrous consequence of raining debris on college students. I will speak my piece, and I don't care if you like it. Nikonus' bulbous eyes stretched wide. Are you trying to start a war? This is rash and impulsive, unbecoming of a Federation officer. What have I got to lose? My cradle is dead, and I'm one of the last survivors of a dying species. It's time someone let us Gojid speak for ourselves, we don't even get that courtesy. The Kolshan waved a tentacle in a dismissive gesture and forwarded an open hangar location. It was all I could do to slow to a safe landing velocity. Berna and Talpin seemed terrified of my flying. The two of them had found their way back to their harnessed seats. Our ship ducked the spaceport overhang with an inch to spare. FTL traffic control gawked from the observation room as I careened down while firing reverse thrusters. Our massive ship slid into the docking port like a plug into a socket. Kolshan soldiers rushed across the terminal, flooding from the connector tunnel to the governance hall. They bore weapons designed to hamper any human predators that magically popped into existence, including heavy guns and strobe lights. I laughed to myself, appreciating how absurd this reaction was. Perhaps these extermination officer wannabes will try to arrest me. I doubt they like that stunt I pulled, but the humans would think it's hilarious, I noted. Protector, those predators get humor. The Kolshans rigged explosive charges by the exit hatch before we could disembark of our own volition. They entered with gun muzzles ready and hollered orders at all of us. My spines bristled at their intimidation, but the fear didn't reach my brain. I struck a bored pose as they pressed a rifle to my temple, pushing it away with a light claw tap. Meanwhile, the Harchan reporters and Gojid refugees had dropped to the floor in terror. Your hospitality needs some work, I remarked. That's no way to welcome guests. The Kolshan soldiers shared a glance, incredulous at my derangement. They swept every corner of our ship, including inside storage cabinets. Amusement flared up once more, as I thought about Carlos folded up like a suitcase to fit in a drawer half his size. Several glares latched onto me, and I was flung to the floor by a rough tentacle. It took an inordinate amount of time for their thorough search, but our hosts became satisfied that humans weren't lying in wait. The Commonwealth guards waved to stand up and ushered us out the door. The 8-sided landing pad had an array of stores and offices built into its walls. Flashing signs directed ambassadorial attaches to the governance hall, written in several languages, including the artificially created Common, which was only used by pretentious diplomats. The general public were welcome to Federation proceedings as spectators, but they weren't cleared to land here. Media personnel hurried out from the connector tunnel, just as we cleared the terminal's threshold. They seemed disappointed to find the unannounced arrival was a few Gojids and Harchan. Whatever an outlet's stance on humanity, the Predator's cell mantra was true. Journalists captured footage of us with our Kolshan escort, with a few calling Silani and I by name. I avoided eye contact and kept my lips sealed. Silani, Harchan Ambassador Rayla will welcome you to hear your report on FAL. A Kolshan soldier turned to me, radiating contempt. She is in crucial talks with undecided Federation members now, so you need to show some patience, Sovlin. I kept a placid expression, though I knew our neutral faction could not turn on humanity. Of course, we'll wait outside until she's ready. Would you show us there, please? The Kolshan beckoned with a cerulean tentacle, steering us through winding corridors. Our journey ventured away from the massive auditorium where state business was conducted. Architects on Alpha seemed to derive joy from constructing floor plans that looked like mazes. It was a wonder we didn't get lost. Perhaps a simpleton like me couldn't understand beauty, but I wished the humans would gut the whole place. Terran layouts were always neat and orderly. We reached an escalator that transported us to a basement. A subway train waited for us and whisked us below the street to the ambassadorial offices. I didn't understand why the diplomatic living arrangements were in the hall's premises, while the workspaces were separate. I suppose this was the only way to provide every species with spacious accommodations. The Kolshan soldiers steered us into a lobby once we arrived at the station. An elevator ride to the 12th floor was the last step of our journey, and I yawned to express annoyance. Judging by the iconography of Inatala, with flowers in her beak, this must be the crocodile's home. Closed doors sealed off a conference room, which I yearned to break into. This is my chance to speak to the Federation, the ones that can still turn back. I have to impress the need to appease humanity. I sprinted toward the meeting area, catching the Kolshians by surprise. A soldier placed a tentacle on my shoulder, and my spines extended further. In a flash of outrage, my claws scratched gashes into his soft skin. Silani gasped at my violent assault, but I had no intention of waiting. This was too important to let some grunt stand in hearts into the human's arms, because poor Marcel. What Captain Sovlin did to that human was wholly cruel and unnecessary. Whatever side of the aisle you're on, Chief Nikonus returned. It's a predator, just like Noah was. You traitors use their names, which is validating the whole premise of personhood. What's next? An Arxer speaker named Huggable. A female Mazik flared her trunk. Noah is obviously a monster, even he realized that. But his arguments were sound. We don't have the luxury of trusting our gut. Fret not, Jerusalem, everyone recognizes the image of evil when it's right in front of them. Do they? That's why you're the only allied race that came to this meeting. Farsal Ambassador Dark tossed her floppy ears. They won't meet with you because you physically attacked anyone who sided with humanity last time. I've apologized for that. I'm willing to talk to everyone now, though you don't deserve it. What I did was the only sensible reaction to heresy. A clamor of voices rose in disharmony, leveling accusations and shouting conflicting views. I was horrified that these were our leaders. They had the emotional maturity of misbehaving children. The good news was that I didn't need to fake diplomatic aplomb. If talking the loudest was the only way to get through to them, that was right up my alley. I am speaking now. My roar shook my vocal cords as I leapt onto the table to draw attention. Jerusalem, I think your army is gone, so you have nothing to throw your weight around with. That's why you're talking. The crocodile ambassador craned his neck in irritation. You have no right. Protector, you make more senseless noise than a stampede. The undecided voters here, most notably the Solian and Iftali alliance, are likely leaning toward war with the humans. This is all based on the cradle's fall, but nobody here was actually there but me. Are the Gojids nothing more than a talking point to you, without our own voice? We served this federation for 6 centuries. Chief Nikonus cleared his throat. The Federation respects the contributions of the Gojidi Union, who worked tirelessly in our defense throughout this war. The Kolshian Commonwealth was saddened by the tragedy that befell your people. That said, we already got the details from Dr. Zarn of the Takkan Coalition, your doctor. Zarn? He said that all humans deserve to die from the moment we laid eyes on Marcel, much like the crocodile ambassador with this Noah. What you need to know is that Prime Minister Pyri and I saw empirical and irrefutable evidence that flipped our stance. My question is, does anyone care what really happened? Of course we care. Go ahead, Captain, the Solian observer interjected. The simple fact is, the humans never attacked a single civilian or even medical target. We were gearing up for an attack on Earth, so they took out our military capabilities to stop us. The Arxer took advantage of the lapse in fortification and started bombing everything in sight. Terran military personnel risked their lives to evac our people. Jerusalem puffed out his chest. The predators were just collecting their own cattle. It didn't surprise me that the Federation assumed our refugees were livestock, but that was why Talpin was here. The Kolshian soldiers stood steadfast at the door, forming an organic wall between my posse and the diplomats. Hearing the crocodile's claim, Berna barreled over a guard with a headbutt. Her brother was close behind. Silani slipped through the dazed soldiers, though the other Harchan journalists weren't as quick to act. Talpin is deaf, and he can attest that humans treat him with dignity. One of my guards had a deaf brother too. They don't discard their own like the Arxer, I retorted. I thought I was going to suffer in Terran custody, but my victim claimed that wasn't who he was. The UN gave me a second chance. The Harchan ambassador, Rayla, turned to Silene. Enough predator apologetic. Was foul holding? The reporter wiggled her toes. Yes, but the Arxer claimed the raid was retribution for Earth. The humans seem to have them under some level of control. That can either be really good, or really bad. They're working together? Officially? Jerusalem shrieked. I told you. I shook my head. The Arxer are lying to the humans to gain their alliance, because they recognize their potential. I was on the bridge of a Terran warship when they returned, and took back the cradle. They won against an enemy we can't hold a candle to, with 3 months FTL experience and primitive ships. They boarded a cattle ship so methodically that the Greys surrendered. Disbelieving expressions swept across the room at the thought of those raging monsters giving up mid-fight. Even Silene had difficulty absorbing that tidbit. While it was common knowledge that Gojid territory had fallen to predators, the situation was more complex than that. That battle was the moment I recognized how well humanity could harness their instincts. They had better control on their neural wiring than any of us. Silene blinked. Is that why the Greys decided to honor humanity's claim to Gojids? Respect? I don't know, or care, what goes through the minds of those savages. I care about the empathetic primates who eat fruit and have protective instincts. My Federation friends, don't you understand the importance of appeasing humanity? You're forcing a species much smarter and more tactical into the Greys' arms. Chief Nikonis leaned back. Appeasement was always my plan, and people like Jerusalem thought they knew better. Have the two predators wear each other down, then, it will be much easier to clean up the survivors. If they want to duke it out, why make them turn their guns on us? My jaw almost dropped to the floor. Using the humans to destroy the Arxer, then mopping up their remnants, was the cold, calculating idea I'd expect from a predator. The United Nations deserved to be shown genuine kindness. It was all I could do to keep my mouth shut. After cooperating through an alliance, these people would get attached to the Terrans eventually. There would be time to give the primates a proper warning, if they didn't see through the facade from the start. This might be the only way to save the Federation. I want humanity to survive, but I can't feed every race in the galaxy to the Greys to achieve that. The humans want to know where every race stands. That was their message, I said. Make your decision, and contact the United Nations. Well, those of you that haven't already fucked your species over. Rayla wiggled her toes in discomfort. We joined the attack on Earth, and I can't say I regret that. I regret that it failed. Silene glared at the Harchan ambassador. You should be ashamed of yourself. Surrender unconditionally, and beg their forgiveness. We can't hold out if the Greys send reinforcements, once they finish up with defenseless Nishtal. This is a wake-up call, I growled. Nobody who openly opposed the humans has survived, assuming the 24 attackers fall to the Arxer. All that matters is that we survive, but it's your choice. Go with our last chance at survival, or push the predators into the Greys' arms. Agreement glittered in the eyes of the Kolshan chief, and a contemplative silence swept through the room. I hoped my argument was more compelling than the humans' vengeful demands. My trust in the Federation's decision-making was gone, where predators were involved. After decades of faithful service, this plea was a final effort to save the species I pledged to defend. Memory transcription subject, Captain Sovlin, Federation Fleet Command. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 24, 2136. The meeting in the Crocodile Ambassador's office was adjourned, and would reconvene tomorrow morning. My arrival had disrupted the proceedings from reaching a consensus, but I was glad I had said my part. News took a long time to travel at interstellar distances, and the Federation representatives were making decisions based on outdated and incomplete information. With that step checked off, I could focus on acquiring the evidence of Arxer first contact. It was peculiar that the records weren't publicly available, but the Arxer had engaged in planet-wide wars. Documentation of such brutality could be traumatizing to watch, so it might be best kept under lock and key. Graphic content should be reserved for the highest-ranking officials. The general public didn't need to live with the full scope of their nightmarish deeds. How would the humans feel if people were traumatized by their own footage? Carlos and Sam should be more open-minded. Chief Nicholas was one of the last to leave Jerusalem's meeting, shooting daggers at the crocodile ambassador. Supposedly, the avian had dive-bombed the Kolshan leader while he announced vote results. I was surprised that Crocodile Alliance personnel weren't removed from Federation activities after not respecting member sovereignty. Their bullying methods were something I'd noticed for years. The Crocodile were pioneers of all aggressive countermeasures we use. They were crucial to our war efforts, I reminded myself. Kolshan soldiers crowded us as the leaders departed, and I wondered if we were bound for a cell. Trespassing charges could be levied against all of us, with some validity. My captain's rank was still active. To the best of my knowledge, disobeying orders could have me stripped of all credentials. Silani didn't seem concerned by our insubordination, though. She was flagging down Nicholas as soon as he rose from his chair. I stand by my request for answers on the refugee crisis, Chief Nicholas, the Harchan reporter shouted. The Federation's disagreement and violence toward each other has left people with no faith in their government. The elderly Kolshan ambled toward the exit. Am I to worry about the people's faith now? Yes. It's a matter of time before someone, maybe at my publication, runs with the info I have. It would be extremely damaging to the Federation. Trust me, you need to sit down with me if you want to maintain stability. Nicholas paused. The reporter seemed to have struck a nerve with that last comment, and left him wondering what dirt she had on the Federation. He didn't know that much of it was silly speculation, combined with predator lies. I suppose he was thinking more about the killing of Federation diplomats, assuming that plot was government-backed. In my office. Go quietly, he decided. The Kolshan guards shoved us forward on their leader's order, digging a rifle butt into my shoulder. I walked at a brisk pace for a few steps, then came to an abrupt halt. The soldier tailgating me cursed as he ran into my spines, and was left with prickle wounds all over his form. It was all I could do to stifle a chuckle. I could transport myself to the elevator without hovering grunts. The lift descended to the lowest floor, which housed the original suite belonging to the Kolshans. The Commonwealth decor referenced their aquatic roots, with massive saltwater tanks lining the walls. Rows of seaweed were planted on the floor, while floating lilies formed the upper layer. I wondered what the humans would think of placing marine habitats indoors. They'd probably think it was as stupid as I did. Nicholas signaled for his guards to stay outside, and he sealed the doors once we entered his office. Next came a polite tentacle gesture toward a sofa. I was happy to sit down after vaulting onto a table and walking all across the governance complex. Berna shared a glance with Talpin. Humans are wonderful caretakers, Nicholas. They have nurturing instincts that rival our own. I'll skip the niceties. You two were brought here to sway votes, and I have little time for mind games, the chief said. Talpin pounded away at his synthesizer. Damn you. We want the Federation to offer us asylum. Why haven't you done anything for us? The Predators could have sent you to their friends, the Paltans. They take the most refugees of anyone in the galaxy. We would be happy to coordinate with them. The Paltans are on the opposite side of Federation space, and you know that. They're a month of travel time away. Berna spat. The Kolshan chief stood and walked to the door with brisk strides. He whispered something to the guards, who dragged the refugees out by the arm. Outrage pumped through my blood, but I managed to keep silent. All they did was beseech Federation aid. It was sad when enemy predators had gone above and beyond to help us, and our allies thought us an inconvenience. Nikona settled back down behind his desk. I will not be guilt-tripped into bringing human spies to live with us. Sileni, what is it that you think you know about the Federation? I have witnesses who say that you gave the voters for diplomatic relations faulty ships. Forensic evidence confirms their tale, Sileni hissed. You set out to kill Federation diplomats in cold blood, just for speaking with the predators. Furthermore, you made the TACCAN representative disappear, because he saw your plot. Bold, yet foolish, accusations. A person who did such things could make you disappear too, my dear. If I don't contact my people within a few days, that story will be run as it is. Simply with the tagline, reporter vanishes after questioning Kolshan misconduct. A cover-up would confirm your guilt, but I want to help make this go away. You need Sovlin and I to protect the Federation's interests. You know we'd pick you all over those ugly predators. Chief Nikonas scrunched up his face at the word ugly. Perhaps he was wondering if we shared the same view of the furless Kolshans. But their aquatic skin was easy on the eyes, and they didn't have the paralyzing stereoscopic vision. The bizarre thing about humans was they had small patches of hair, in random places. Regardless, a Harchan individual wouldn't curl her lip at hairless beings, when her race had no fur either. We better hope Sileni's response makes him talk. She just gave our Kolshan host a good reason to dispose of us too. How much do you know? Nikonas asked. Sileni flicked her tongue in anticipation. Everything. I know you deleted the first contact files from the records. The Arxer have emotional intelligence and artwork. The Federation saw those traits in humans when we observed them the first time, but only recorded the negative attributes. I get that you wanted Resell dead for treason. Why didn't you just execute him and the Terran ambassador on Offa? I waited for a denial to tumble from the Kolshan's mouth, but the troubled glint in his eyes worried me. His pupils darted toward the door, as though he was considering summoning the guards. Chills ran up my spines. There was something off about his reaction. Slander against the Federation should draw a vehement response. Nikonas' bulbous eyes narrowed. The people recognize me as a reasonable leader who gave a predator the chance to speak. Gunning down a pleading representative, in front of cameras, makes people question our morality. The exact reason that what Sovlin did is a terrible look. Everyone said I was more than fair to Noah. I even fed and provided for the human. Determination sparkled in Sileni's gaze. You didn't fully answer my question. Also, why wait until the diplomats were out of Kolshan territory for the shuttle malfunction? Out of sensor range. Everyone, including their governments, would assume the predator killed them. Nobody saw what happened, and the people don't need to know. Why not? Because you hate humans, and never intended for them to get a real chance. I don't hate humans, but their diplomatic efforts cannot succeed. Look at the disaster that is the Venlol. How many civilians want to see humans attending our meetings, walking these grounds, living here? Also, our people would start asking questions about predators that we don't want them to ask. Unease swirled around in my belly, as those last words registered with me. This Kolshan chief must be going senile in his old age. Perhaps I was reading basic paranoia as something more, because the humans kept whispering theories in my ears. Sileni palmed her chin. Federation citizens shouldn't ask questions about how first contact with the Arxer really went. We have it on good faith that you starved the Greys to death. You must not run that storyline, the chief hissed, leaping from his seat. It would do irreparable damage to general morale, and it's not the whole truth. You're a good journalist, Sileni, not someone who lives on shock value. Any reporter worth their salt isn't trying to disintegrate the Federation. Dizziness corkscrewed up my body, and I fought back the urge to scream. A ringing sensation drowned out all auditory signals. The tempest of emotions made me want to pass out. The shock was the strongest, as my mind began unraveling. The Kolshenbat couldn't have just said what I heard. The Arxer were the ones who attacked us, because they were the Arxer. My entire worldview was shattered in an instant. The anger over what happened to my family, knowing that the Federation were responsible, it was unspeakable. What I wanted to believe was that humans were unique predators, while the Arxer were demonic monsters. It was difficult to accept that my entire life was based on a lie. Saying that the starvation tale wasn't the whole truth meant that it had some veracity to it. I hadn't even been listening to what Koff said during its interrogation, because an Arxer's words didn't matter. The only thing I cared about was if the humans had made it scream. The Greys deserved to suffer for eating my family alive. Why couldn't the damn Terrans see that? What did you do? I charged across the desk at Niconas, and my vision blurred from rage. My claws were by his throat before I knew it, pinning him against the chair. You move an inch and I'll tub your esophagus through your jawbone. The Kolshen blinked. See, calm down. You are quite unstable, Sovlin. Your monkey pals have done a number on you. Fuck you. They're not monkeys, any more than you're an ectolan. It's a distant evolutionary link, a term you use to desapientize them. Start talking your heart out, or I'll carve you up. Silani tugged at my arm. Please stop, you're scaring me. Niconas is cooperating. Don't you want to hear what he has to say? No, I don't. We came here to stop a human-Arxer alliance, not add fuel to the fire. Maybe we should cover this up, so our people survive. The Arxer say that you tried to make them allergic to meat. I took a deep breath, and backed away from the Kolshen. I didn't understand what it was saying, but I think it meant they starve without flesh. You talked to a Grey? Niconas' voice leapt up an octave, before he collected himself. I'm disappointed in you, Sovlin. You used to be a good officer, now, you're a complete disgrace. Your family would be disgusted with the company you keep. You know nothing about my family. Talk, just fucking talk, now. While my words were still charged with anger, conscious thought crept in. The logical side of me realized how dangerous it was to publish this. Whatever really happened, we were in a war of extinction, there couldn't afford to be any doubt. Narrative clarity is what gave the Federation conviction. Without it, we would start losing worlds faster than ever, and face divisions within our own ranks. The Kolshen sighed. There were 3 of us who laid out the groundwork for the Federation. When Kolshen explorers came in contact with the Farsal, more than 1,000 years ago, the galaxy was young. We were the first in this sector to escape our gravity well. You know about the founding of this institution, but I reiterate it just in case. The Crocodile were the third, Silani offered. Yes, they were a problem from the start, aggressive, disagreeable. We tried to identify the problem, and why they were so ill-equipped for spacefaring. We learned they were scavengers, who would occasionally go for fish as well. We were more level-headed because we're herbivores. My jaw almost hit the floor, as I tried to digest this information. The Crocodile, a race I had cooperated with throughout my career, consumed meat 1,000 years ago? It was tough to believe that they'd hidden that fact from everyone else. Thinking of them as predators didn't compute in my brain. By the Protector, they had side-facing eyes, and a religion against flesh-eating beasts. My endearment to the humans was all that stopped me from wanting the birds removed from the Federation. Flesh-eaters deserved a chance, and we had managed to coexist for centuries. I didn't understand what Niconas' scavenger descriptor meant, but the Kolshens must have put an unholy amount of time into predator research. We gave them a choice, take our cure, or we would wipe them out with a bioweapon. It was an easy choice for them. We brought them to be re-educated in camps, and the new religions were the algae on the fruit mash. They had to hate predators, or they'd find a way to revert back. Sileni bore an aghast expression. You invented the cult of Inatala? Beliefs, religious or not, are the best way to control people. We planted fake archaeological texts and rewrote their history. They've become a productive race. Harder to control now, but the cultural changes stuck. They have an enemy, a purpose. Do the crocodile have any idea what was done to them? The crocodile don't know this, obviously, that would be cruel, Sileni. It's a closely guarded secret of the highest-ranking Farsal and Kolshians. The process is down to a science, more subtle these days. We keep peace, and give grotesque races a chance at normalcy. Races? Plural? I echoed. A sadistic glint surfaced in his pupils, though it was gone a second later. Perhaps Niconas sensed how much this narrative hurt me. I had no idea how to feel about the crocodile being a cured race. It clearly hadn't ended their aggression, given their intimidation tactics. Still, it would be cruel for Jerusalem to learn about this past. Yes, I'll get to that. We learned a hard lesson about giving full-on predator races the same chance. Hunting and scavenging are different. Hunting, being an actual predator, means unchecked war and violence, he explained. The Greys asked us for help with their food problem, then refused to try herbivory. Their arrogance is why they starved. Sileni narrowed her eyes. You also killed their cattle, to be sure. They've shouted that one from the rooftops before. Blatantly untrue. We don't kill herbivore animals, we're not predators. That's just absurd. I swallowed in discomfort. There's others in the Federation that used to eat meat? You said you'd get to that. Oh, Sovlin, I already told you. For the small minority of species who don't find herbivory alone, we teach them the right way. Doesn't the religion against predator sound familiar? Something clicked in my brain, as the prevalence of the Great Protector faith flashed through my mind. The Federation encouraged it as an emblem of Gojid culture. No, that couldn't be right. I wasn't a predator. The thought of eating meat sickened me, and our government had been the first to take action against Earth. The damn Kolshian looked so sure of himself though, somehow, my heart knew he was telling the truth. I sank to my knees, and stared at my lengthy claws in horror. The ancestors in my genes ate carcasses. My body was conditioned for that. Acid surged in my throat, before I puked all over Nicona's feet. The Kolshian leader massaged my neck. Oh, it's all right. We fixed your species, one of the most successful conversions. Chalk it up as something you have in common with the upright apes. The self-hatred was on the same level as when I realized my mistake with Marcel. Sileni was giving me the petrified look she gave Carlos, like I was a monster. All I wanted was to escape from my body. There was no way I could control predator instincts I didn't know I had. This was a nightmare of unimaginable proportions. No. You're lying, I whimpered. I am not. See, Sileni? It's cruel. The reporter's eyes watered. I don't know what to say. This is a lot at once. I crumpled into a ball, letting my tears drip to the floor. A faint thought wondered how the humans would react, but I didn't have the energy for hypotheticals. Everyone I ever knew and loved, myself and my family, were abominations. Not only had the Federation done what the Arxer said, but our members were corrupted. My perennial allegiance was gone. What did Gojid history actually look like? What elements of our culture had been wiped away? I didn't know how we'd begin to figure that out, with the cradle gone. It wasn't clear who we were, or how to retain a cohesive identity. The humans, for all their goodwill, couldn't help us in this regard. Niconas leaned forward. Now, you see why it's important to protect these secrets. People like the Gojids can live in peace from their past. We've made it possible for them to walk among us, without threatening stability. We saved them. What you did is wrong, Silene whispered, shooting a glance at me. You've been conducting genetic engineering on innocent species at, I don't even know how large a scale. Your actions are going to kill us all, between the Arxer and the humans. You haven't learned a thing here. If you publish any of this, I'll shoot it down as a wild fabrication. There's no proof. Nobody would believe you. The Harchin chuckled bitterly and pointed to her notepad. A tiny camera was taped to the top, blinking yellow. My gaze focused on the lens, a desperate plea for help. I wondered if the humans were watching this live stream now, from their shuttle. The Kolshan's eyes widened with horror, and he slapped a tentacle over his mouth. Silene cleared her throat. They don't have to believe me. You just told everyone yourself. Nikonas bared his teeth. What? Short-sighted bitch. You have no idea what you've just done. I should have you both shot. Execute us on video. Go ahead. The truth is out there, and you can't take it back. There was a certainty in her words, and she knelt beside me without hesitation. I let her help me stand, grateful for the support. Kindness for the Gojits might be on permanent hiatus, now that we were outed as predators. Nausea lingered around the notion of my species eating meat. It would take years to make sense of this interaction. I didn't know that Silene was right to broadcast any of this, even with the lies and manipulation we'd uncovered. Regardless, nobody could have known the content Nikonas would divulge. It would be curious to see how the Federation's citizens reacted to our interview. The humans were destined to side with the Arxer now, so what mattered was the time we had left.
Blink twice if you looked at this description, and don't forget to smash that big juicy like button. Thanks.